It is a Thursday, August 14th, 2025. Uh, Rob Browne in Memphis, Brendan Martin in Ocala. A lot of ground to cover today. We got Jordan Davis Hill, 24/7 Sports covers Georgia, checking in with us in the first segment, followed by John Hartwell and Matt Dean. And half past the hour, we'll have Gary Harris from Tuscaloosa.
I'm here to answer any questions
Yeah.
that anyone has today.
Well, you're the question man, the question
I've got the question cup.
The question
It's like the
cup.
magic 8-ball.
Well,
All the answers for the SEC football season are right in this cup.
Yeah, and I've got the crystal ball, and let's get right to it, man. Take a picture with your QR code phone of the QR codes on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Got a lot of subscribers. We always want more. Share it with your friends, family members, and neighbors, because the next 60 minutes is the best hour of power of the SEC you'll find anywhere. And one of the best over in Athens, Jordan Davis Hill checks in with us here right now. And Jordan, I'm looking over this roster, Lindy's, Athens, Phil Steele. Those are the big three. I think they're the only three that are still out there doing the magazines. I love them. I'm just intrigued by the receiver room, Noah Thomas and Zachariah Branch. Last year you talked about Georgia's receivers dropped 37 passes. And I don't know if that's got to be a record at Georgia. These two guys are coming in. How are they performing in the spring? And they got a good connection with Gunnar Stockton?
Yeah, I think that they have been really encouraging. Zachariah Branch probably was the MVP of spring practice, did such a good job then. And just based on what we've heard to this point, I think he's picked up where he left off. One of the guys that has really stood out during fall camp is Noah Thomas, who, I think it was Mike Bobo last week talked about that, during spring, he was sort of, he was trying to learn the offense, and it was taking a little bit longer, and that happens with some of the receivers they bring in. But it's very clear he's picked up on it, and he's had a really good fall camp to this point. They had their first scrimmage last Saturday. He had a wild touchdown catch in that scrimmage. Georgia, I really like this receiving room that they have right now, because you have the two transfers who we're talking about. You bring back Colby Young. You bring back Dylan Bell. You bring back London Humphreys, the Vanderbilt transfer from last year, who has really made strides getting ready for his second year at Georgia. And that's not to include Zacoby White-Helton, who's had a really good offseason.
Yeah.
You signed 5 high school guys. They're really deep at receiver. And, I would commend James Coley, the receivers coach. They've done a really good job of flipping the room after a really disappointing 2024. I think that the passing game is in good shape, and obviously Gunnar Stockton's a piece of that. But I think the biggest piece is they're going to have a lot of weapons out wide for him.
And you listen to what Kirby Smart's saying. He's trying to use the us against the world, and that's smart. He's the best motivator in this league, and they win the league last year. They beat Texas twice, but for everybody out there, if you don't know, you wouldn't know it. It was all Texas. I mean, and I have a feeling Kirby's having fun with this right now. I think about the defense, and was Elijah Miller. You're going to count on some younger guys on the line of scrimmage. Talk about the front seven for Georgia, because in the last, Dave Bartu talks about it on the show a lot. Last 15 years, Kirby Smart, #1 defensive coordinator in America, and also one of the top 2 recruiters. Well, look at the wins. He's right there. What is he, 1 or 2 in wins?
Yeah, I mean, he's had a fantastic run. And one of the big questions for me during fall camp was the defensive line. And I think we've gotten good returns to this point in camp. You kind of put 2 guys together there, Rob, Christian Miller and Elijah Griffin.
Elijah Griffin. Sorry,
yeah.
The hybrid.
Yes, they'd be one hell of a football player if you put them together. But really, Christian Miller and Jordan Hall are the 2 guys that I've heard the most about on this defensive line. And I think that's good news, because Christian Miller is going to be your defensive tackle, and Jordan Hall more than likely is going to be the starting nose tackle. And that interior defensive line is the key to what I think are the best Georgia defenses, getting that interior pressure. They both played really well. Heard some good things about some of the guys behind them, Xavier McLeod, Elijah Griffin, who we were just talking about, a true freshman that I think is going to get a lot of run. Namdi Ogboko, who I think is going to give good depth behind
Yeah.
Jordan Hall. So, I think the way I can read between the lines, what we're hearing, I think they want to see some guys be a little bit more consistent behind Christian Miller and behind Jordan Hall, because I think those guys have really met the moment in fall camp and practiced really well to this point. But there's guys back there with a lot of potential, and I'd point to Elijah as probably the top one, a guy who was a 5-star for a reason, a guy that I think as this season goes, you're going to see more and more of. But I'd point to Xavier McLeod, transferred from South Carolina last year and didn't play a ton, but it was like every time he was on the field, he flashed. I think him having an entire offseason with Georgia and having that conditioning, I would tell people keep an eye out on Xavier McLeod once the season gets going.
Well, you look at the first two games, they're not going to be real challenges for Georgia. I mean, just get the players excited, don't get hurt. You go to Knoxville, September 15th. Or September 14th. That's going to be 13th. Is going to be a big challenge right there because it's a road game. But right now, I mean, do you feel comfortable with Gunnar Stockton? We haven't seen him play a whole lot, but that'll be a great chance early on for him to make a stamp, kind of like David Green did early in his career.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing is there's still going to be so many questions, even if he has two really good games against Marshall and Austin Peay. And I think the thing to keep in mind with Gunner is that Tennessee game is going to be the first true road environment he's played in and played like legitimate snaps.
Yeah.
You look at SEC title game in Atlanta. I mean, that was a whole lot of Georgia fans there, and then the Sugar Bowl. I don't remember the split just from that day, but it was not a true road environment against Notre Dame. So, yeah, I mean, that is where we're going to learn a lot, and I do kind of hate having to wait a few weeks into the season because it's really not only Gunner. I mean, I look at the safety competition that we're seeing go on right now between Ja'Cory Thomas and Adrian Maddox. The offensive line, which I saw someone in the comments was asking about that. That is my biggest question about this team is just, can this line meet the moment? Because they were disappointing last year. They did not play to everyone's expectations. And, I hate kind of like glossing over two games because you can learn a lot, but playing Marshall, playing Austin Peay, you really, as someone following the scene, you're looking at that week 3 game. How do they handle going on the road? How does Gunner play in a raucous environment? Can he handle it well? And when things go bad, when there are a few mistakes, how does he bounce back? So, we'll be at those first 2 games, but we'll really be paying attention week 3 when they're in Knoxville.
Yeah, another one. I think Blind Squirrel Sports asking. He heard Georgia hired a couple of analysts to work with the running game. I mean, Dell McGee was so good at that position for a long time. Now, he's coaching at Georgia State in Atlanta, but run game is critical. And if you can run the ball in the SEC, you can win it every year. Even though passing is big, you still have to run it. That just means you've got a stronger line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I think Georgia won in spite of their run game last year because it just didn't meet the standard. But the 2 analysts he's talking about, Phil Rauscher, who came in from the Jacksonville Jaguars, had been the offensive line coach, I think, the last 3 years, had been with the Minnesota Vikings before that. And then a guy that very familiar with Georgia, John Lilly, who was a tight ends coach, I think, for the entirety of the Mark Richt era. He was there for several years, had been at Florida State before that. Went on to the NFL after he left Georgia, was with the Rams, was with the Browns, is coming from North Carolina, was there with Mac Brown the last few years. So getting those 2 guys in, I think that they've really come in and tried to make their mark and do their part, playing their roles. They're not the position coaches. And it is interesting with John Lilly because when he was Georgia's tight ends coach, one of his grad assistants was Todd Hartley, who is now the tight ends coach. So that's 2 people that have worked together before. And Todd Hartley talked about this last week that, whenever he has had questions about tight end, he said, even when John Lilly was at North Carolina, John Lilly would be who I called. So to have him is going to be really helpful. And Rauscher's a guy we've heard quite a bit out there. Just the one practice we got to see, he was very vocal, helping Stacey Searles with that offensive line. Those guys have, a background of coaching their positions at the highest level. I think they're going to be leaned on as Georgia. One of the big rallying cries of fall camp has been running the ball better and stopping the run. Those guys are going to be counted on to try to get creative and help Georgia run the ball better in 2025.
What about this team compared to the previous five makes them better, or you're concerned about it? But I mean, and that's just part of it. Every year, that's why they get up and coach these guys. If it was that easy, they wouldn't need coaches. So I'm asking you a kind of a loaded question.
I think the biggest thing with this group, and Kirby has talked about this a couple times, is that they're young. And I think that that can be a benefit. Now, there's a lot of unproven, and there might be some slip ups and some losses along the way. But Kirby's talked about how hungry this team is, and we talked to Glenn Schumann, the defensive coordinator, last week, and I think they were 6 practices in at that point when we spoke to him. But he said that they've brought the energy every day, that they have shown up ready to work, and I think there's a lot of people looking back on 2024 and trying to figure out what went wrong. And I don't know if it was complacency. I don't know what happened, but I do think that this is a sort of a chance to start over for a lot of the guys. Some of the older guys, Oscar Delp talked to us back in the spring, talking about that he kind of felt like he didn't have his focus in the right spot. It was a chance at the end of that year he could have gone pro. And he said, that he has really changed his work ethic this offseason. And Kirby told us that he won a most improved player award in terms of what he's done in the weight room. So I think it's a hungry team, which you don't always see with a team that just won a conference championship. But I think this group is young. I think it's got a group with a lot of people stepping up, playing for the first time, playing major roles. And I think they're hungry to go out there and prove they're able to.
A couple of more before you go. The schedule. You've got Texas coming to town. You got Alabama, and you got Ole Miss. Best home schedule in memory?
Yes, I mean it's the best one in a minute, and it's a situation where when you look at the last few years. I mean, I think about the 2024 season.
Yeah.
The fact that they had to go on the road to Alabama, on the road to Texas, on the road to Ole Miss. There were a lot of Georgia fans pretty upset about that, and I don't think Kirby was thrilled about it. He kind of let that be known after they beat Texas in the SEC title game. But a rallying cry that Kirby has had during that season was, man, I'm glad the schedule flips next year. I'm glad these guys get to come here, and I really truly feel like season ticket holders at Georgia have kind of gotten the short end of the stick the last few years, just with some of the splits. Not a ton of marquee home games, and obviously, that Florida game's always in Jacksonville, and not being able to have that one. Sometimes you lose a home game, depending on who gets that designation each year. So, no, I think this is the best one in a while, and I think for Georgia fans, it's quite it's well earned because they've had to be patient. I was going to answer. Someone was asking me about that analyst. It's Rauscher, Rauscher. Phil Rauscher is the guy I was talking about.
Okay. And one more thing before you go and let people know how they can follow you. Any stories you're going to be talking about, writing about, and you got a great podcast everybody needs to subscribe to. And as always, thanks more than you know for your time and sharing and what you do for this show. We can't appreciate it enough.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I've got a story this morning on J.J. Hanney, a very interesting defensive lineman, a freshman for Georgia from Berlin. And wrote a little bit about his story. He moved to California a few years ago, got on Georgia's radar, and he's been really impressive so far. I don't know that he's going to play a lot right away, but he's been wearing a Blue Guardian cap at practice, and that is a reward for the guys who are driven, who are playing with what they call fire, passion, and energy. So cool writing about him. Write about some of the summer enrollees, what they've done. I have a chance in a couple hours to go talk to some more players, so there'll be more stuff there. And Junkyard Dogcast podcast, we had one talking about that first scrimmage and what we're looking for in this one on Saturday. And want to encourage folks, if you like what we're talking about, if you're a Georgia fan, go to dogs247.com. We still got a 50% off sale. We had a huge day on Saturday coming off that first scrimmage. Hoping we'll have some more good tidbits from the second one, and hope anyone watching will come join us over on the Junkyard and can take in all the intel with us.
Well, we'll share your stuff. You always share ours. That's another reason I love having you on here. You're awesome. Take care.
All right. Appreciate you guys.
All right. Brendan was bringing in John Hartwell and Matt Dean joining us in here in this ruckus. I'm telling you, man, we get closer to these games. There's so many storylines. You got to, there's the guy from Berlin already wearing the blue hat. you would think they'd wear like a silver and black hat there. And Matt looks like he's right there in Athens with his red and black on right now in front of the Crystal. Are you at Sotheby's today at the auction? How are you?
Hey guys, I'm in my usual spot, guys. You know,
I love it.
Rhodes colors are red and black too. So
I know.
It's the opening. Our first year students move in today. So just kind of celebrating our first year students today.
By the way, I was over at my mom's yesterday. The 100th anniversary alumni magazine she got from Rhodes.
Yeah.
When she graduated, it was Southwestern, and
Yes.
they had electricity. But anyway, that is John Hartwell. If you hadn't been to that campus, Rhodes College in Memphis, it's been used in a lot of movies. I think Rob Lowe's in a couple of movies over there. I'm not sure if he ate, though, in Bryan Hall in the refectory in that cafeteria. Matt, you can go over there. And John, Matt can eat. It's less than $5 for an incredible meal. Hey, my treat anytime. So,
good morning, guys. Good to be on with y'all. Interesting conversation there regarding the Georgia Dogs, and I know you talked about those first couple of games, Marshall and Austin P, and then a trip to Knoxville. How about the news out of Knoxville yesterday? A new Adidas deal for $20 million a year. I mean, that's, wow. Their previous deal with Nike was about $5 million. It sounds like a significant portion of the increase will be going to student athletes with NIL opportunities. And that's a creative way for some of these companies who are associated. And actually my former deputy AD here, Coleman Barnes, has joined the Vol Nation here in the last week and is working primarily with NIL with them. And I was talking to him a little bit last night about that deal and what an opportunity for their student athletes. And I think you're going to see more deals like that as institutions try to become more and more creative with funneling dollars into the pockets of student athletes.
Yeah. And, we've had Gary Stokan on the show a couple of weeks ago. He was talking the story about Adidas when he was representing, he was close to Michael Jordan. And he said that he went back to Germany to the Adidas headquarters. Adidas is what they call it everywhere in the world. In America, it's Adidas. And he said, look, for $2.5 million, we can get Michael Jordan. And the committee, the board said, we don't have $2.5 million to put in the U.S. market. And at the end of the first year, Michael Jordan had made $226 million off of his shoes. And the Air Jordan brand has now surpassed $7 billion. Matt Dean, I would not want to be remembered as the guy at Adidas that turned down Michael Jordan, but holy cow, man. Adidas, I saw that yesterday, $100 million over 5 years.
So we call them three stripes. That's what we refer to Adidas as. Because we're a Nike school, so we kind of switched over. I personally, as a bigger guy, I think Adidas fits me. There's not any body type that fits me. I mean, but Adidas is a little wider, I think. It's not as athletic cut for some of the coaches.
There you go.
But to be honest,
Matt, you look like a medium guy to me. Come on now, the old Mark Hudspeth throwbacks.
I couldn't fit my head in this medium. What are you talking about? No, honestly, I think that's really creative, John. And my question to you is that with this new third-party system, is that money you could funnel to maybe some of the other sports that maybe are not in the traditional football budget per se? That would be my question to you.
Yeah, I really think it is because, again, the Adidas dollars or any other vendor, I even Coleman was talking a little bit last night about their Aramark deal with athletics concessions and a portion of that going to student athletes too. And it's really creative because, a lot of schools now have their foundation set up where you can make tax deductible, donations to the university, to the foundation, and then shift it through to rev share. But this one makes it so much cleaner. And there, anybody who tells you, any institution who says, hey, we've got this figured out and it's totally foolproof is kidding themselves right now, because they're still massaging the process, seeing what additional guidelines or regulations may come out from the IRS. you've got institutions, people within institutions who are like, gosh, we don't want to, this is an additional hassle for our purchasing people. We don't want this to flow through here. I know there's some third-party vendors out there. Teamworks comes to mind, who's done a nice job of implementing software to help the NIL process, but it's a whole different game that, again, and we've been talking about this for the last 3 years, that continues to change every day.
Well, all this, that Adidas deal you're going to watch now, that's going to be a hot thing. How many schools can Adidas grab? Auburn just finally, after 19 years, great relationship with Under Armour, moved to Nike, and all you hear is people going, I've seen the new stuff, and it just doesn't excite me. So, man, that apparel stuff, that's ultra competitive. All right, the top 25 came out, and Texas, for the first time in their history, is the preseason number one. There's people questioning. I'm gonna throw this out there, and Gary Harris will be on in a few minutes in Tuscaloosa. Texas is the new Alabama, and don't get ahead of your skis. Y'all, they've got a lot of money at Texas, and they got a lot of tradition. But in the last 55 years, they've got one national championship. I think Alabama's got like 7 or 8 in that time frame, playing in the toughest league in America. Whoever wants to grab this one first, is Texas really the team that's going to dethrone Alabama? And right now, Georgia's on top. Florida's been out. Auburn's been out for a while. They're coming back. Tennessee hadn't won the SEC championship since 1998. Florida hadn't won it since 2008. I think there's some shifting in the tectonic plates under there, but is Texas really going to take over?
Well, let me start, John. I'll let you finish. You're a good closer. Here's why I like Texas this year. Everyone wants to say, and listen, I think Arch Manning is going to be outstanding. But I look on the defensive side of the ball, and I see Anthony Hill Jr., and I see what they got coming back defensively. How nice is it to take a defense up to Columbus? And what's interesting, guys, I was listening to the radio yesterday. I didn't have time to get the whole conversation in, but they were saying this is the first time in a long time they can remember a preseason number one has traveled to an opening game and been a slight dog or a pick'em situation, if that makes sense. But you're playing the defending national champion. You're on the road. I think they're going to go up there. I think they're going to beat the Buckeyes. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a uglyish 2016 type game, because I think Texas, give credit to Sark. Sark's always been known for his development of quarterbacks and offensively, and a great play caller. How about they've spent a lot of money on their defense, guys, and I think the defense travels. I think they go up there to Ohio State and win there and probably stay number one most of the season, but they're not going to run the table, guys. There's too many tough road games they have in the SEC, but I do think Texas is unique this year because I think they have a lot back on defense.
And speaking of that, Texas, this is their first time ever preseason number one. The school that holds the record for that preseason number one rankings since that poll started in 1950 preseason is Oklahoma. They've been preseason number one 10 times, John Hartwell.
Yeah, I was going to use the analogy when you look at the top of the preseason poll, and again, preseason polls ultimately mean nothing. They just give people a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
But in today's age of college football, it's always been important, but I think even more important now that NIL and rev share are here to stay. There's a clear correlation between investment in and success output. And how do you spell success? WIN. And it's no secret between Ohio State winning last year, Texas being preseason this year, 2 of the top 5 budgets and all of college athletics, that obviously investment is really important, and it's not just facilities and coaches, and it's obviously rev share. There's so many things that are a portion are a part of that now. The intriguing one to me that not a whole lot of people are talking about is Clemson's preseason ranking. And
Yeah.
after 2 or 3 years off the radar screen, everybody had written off Dabo. He has adapted now to the NIL situation, and before where he was saying, hey, we don't really want to take transfers. We don't want to do that.
Yeah.
In this business, it's adapt or die. And, I think that's going to be an interesting story to watch as the season unfolds.
Well, it is. And I mean, Alabama's been preseason number one like 9 times, Ohio State 8 times. SMU, this is their highest preseason ranking since 1985. And I mean, they're fun. They're great fodder. But John, you're right about Clemson. Clemson has stayed true. I mean, they're bringing in some guys in the portal, but they've got a culture of guys that have been around there a long time. I'll tell you another program that I think really has is Florida. If you listen to Billy Napier, talks about the number of guys that have been around there for 2 or 3 or 4 years. That carryover, Matt, I mean, in the locker room, and who's the backup? Harrison Bailey. I mean, everybody's asking about DJ Lagway, and it's like start anxiety. Everybody, is he hurt? Is he? You know what? They're going to play. He's going to play hurt, but the guy makes everybody around him better. There's just certain people. Y'all, we've all met people. When you meet them, if you ever met, my dad told me one time, he said, boy, you meet Fred Smith, FedEx guy. He just exudes confidence. He's just, you look at him and you're like, anything, treat the word impossible as motivation, Matt Dean.
Well, I think whenever DJ Lagway's football career at the college level ends, there's a great chance he'll be a top 1 pick in the NFL draft. Yeah. He's got what I call the it factor. He's a leader of men in the locker room. Before you even step on a field, you want to play for the guy. And I think leadership matters. It always has mattered. It always will matter. Guys, I wanted to mention something I saw on the social media side yesterday. I'm not sure who said this, but there was someone out there that said, you guys, if Barry Switzer back in the day would have had the freedom of NIL as it is now, they said no one would have beat him. Barry Switzer, I didn't realize this stat. He was 12-5 against Tom Osborne in Nebraska, and that's when Nebraska was rolling. Okay, yeah. Barry Switzer had some great college football teams, and if you could have given him a portion of that $20.5 million, John Hartwell, we would have been rolling in Norman, and they were anyway. Yeah, I think there's some coaches, that are out of it now that are like a little envious of how they had to go through it to get their success compared to what's going on now too.
Well, they managed to, if you saw the documentary on recording, Marcus Dupree and Uncle Curly at the hotel in Philadelphia. Let's just say there were a few liberties taken back in the day. But you know what? Barry Switzer could coach. And, I mean, you talk about a motivator. He gave one of the greatest quotes of all time, post-game celebration in the locker room after they won the national championship. He stood up and he said, boys, too much is never enough of this, winning. And John, you look in the SEC, everybody's got some money. And I don't know, are y'all aware about what happened at Kansas yesterday? They're going to do $450 million. One guy gave them $75 million yesterday. That's going to football. Buddy, we're in the SEC, and I see Mr. Sip, and I love this guy. It says ACC Sidelines podcast now. No, it's not. We're covering SEC Southern sports, but you better be paying attention to what's going on out there. But I think right in the SEC, if you look at storylines, look at Ole Miss, John. You lived in Oxford 10 years. The expectations of Ole Miss fans now, they've never – and Johnny Vault was there, 59, 60, 62. It was incredible. And we're going to bring in Gary Harris. But, John, before we bring in Gary, just real quick, the expectations at Ole Miss are warranted. And 3 of the last 4 years, they finished in the top 12. It's a different era. You ain't hanging out in the Grove. You're going into the Vault.
Yeah, they are. And I'm kind of surprised at their preseason ranking being down in the mid-20s. Obviously, Jackson Dart is gone. But I can tell you this, there's talent on both sides of the ball, 2 or 3 deep in Oxford. And, Lane Kiffin likes kind of being under the radar screen. And I think you're going to hear some noise from the Rebels this year.
Yeah, I agree. Let's bring in Gary Harris in Tuscaloosa. You got him, Channel 23, Tider Insider TV. Also does a great show. Put it on the Tide 100.9 app on your phone, 9 to 11, right after we go off the air. And he's got great guests, great insight. Nothing beats the local reporters. Gary, good morning. Thanks for joining us. You're in the studio. What's happening in Tuscaloosa with the football team right now? Expectations, they're ranked 7th or 8th in the preseason poll. That right there seems like motivation.
Yeah, a lot of schools I think would be celebrating being ranked, in the top 10. But for Alabama, the AP poll that came out earlier this week at number 8, that's their lowest preseason ranking since 2008. 24 that year. Of course, we know what happened. They beat Clemson in the opener, and began the exit of Tommy Bowden away from Clemson, and then went 12-0, ranked number 1 into the regular season. Lost a fourth quarter battle with Florida in the SEC championship game, and then 2009. Won it all. And, they've been a mainstay in the top 5 since then. But I think it's about right. I mean, I think when you look at a team that lost 4 games last year, I think 7 and 8 is just about where they should be. I think they certainly have potential to finish higher. As I said last week to you guys, I haven't covered a team here since I've been here and I don't, really know what to make of it. I hope it's all, warranted. I haven't covered a team where there has been not one negative storyline since the start of fall camp, but if there is one out there, I've missed it. There's not been one negative storyline that's come out of this fall camp. And that includes the naming of Ty Simpson as the starting quarterback earlier this week. It seems to have been met with certainly not universal appeal, but a statewide appeal. I think everybody that's an Alabama fan that I've talked to likes the call. The players are in alignment. The coaching staff seems thrilled for him. The staff, even the other quarterbacks, the impression I get is they feel like it's his time and they're ready to come in behind him. And so it's as positive a fall camp as I can remember. I keep looking for something to come out that's negative, even in terms of the personnel. I mean, I know there are always positions where they're trying to strive for, get better, but there hasn't been a single position group that the coaches seem disappointed in or seem concerned that this position group is not up to standard so that we can win. So now you got to go out on the field and do it. And, the one thing I do caution fans on my radio show every morning is while Alabama feels great and has high expectations, coaches and players at LSU feel great. Coaches and players in Texas feel great. Yeah. Coaches and players in Georgia feel great. Coaches and players in the 2 Columbias feel great. South Carolina, Missouri. You can just about go to most of the schools in this league, and even the schools that aren't expecting to compete for the playoff. Right now, everything's best case scenario, as we've just talked about on this show. Until you play a game, you're seeing everything through, positive eyes. So I think that's the case to some degree, but for the most part, it is. It's the vibe here is just extraordinarily positive.
Well, you saw Ralph Russo's article in The Athletic, is Texas college football's new Alabama. Can't wait to get Ralph on this show. I think we ought to take Ralph to, is Lee's Tomb still open in Tuscaloosa, Gary?
It's not, but
whoa. Hey, you're the fellow that wrote that article. Come on over here.
Yeah, I haven't read it yet. I need to, and I will. I'll get around to reading it. I haven't read it, but I think that's, again, the Athletics is doing well. It's one of the few, sports journalism places that seems to be growing, and great writers. And he's certainly a great writer coming over from the Associated Press. Yeah. And the headline screams at you. I'm sure if you read the article, he's making some valid points, but I would pump the brakes on that right now. I mean, and especially in this era, I think it's going to be harder to have the consistent dominance that Nick Saban was able to have. But, this is a big year for Texas. I don't know about the three of you. And, I consider myself very well versed on the history of college football. I think my knowledge is up there with a lot of people's. I was absolutely stunned to find out that Texas had never been ranked number 1 in the preseason AP poll, which goes back to 1936. I was shocked by that. I thought, you're going to tell me some of the Durham Royal teams, Fred Akers teams, some of those teams that competed and won national championships or were in position for in the old Southwest Conference were never ranked number one. That was surprising to me.
Yeah, I mean, it really was. And Ralph I love having him on the show. He always gives you a couple of new restaurants up in Brooklyn and New York you've never been to on the Italian side. I get hungry talking to him. But I'm going to read that as well. I'll be on the fishing trip this weekend in Hardy with the Alabama gang, Auburn and Alabama guys. There'll be 14 of us. Hopefully we'll break the record of 623 rainbow trout back in Memorial Day weekend. So, wow, we catch a lot of fish up there and tell some great stories. And there'll be a little football talk. John Hartwell, you heard what Gary just said. I mean, that challenge, everybody, every school in the SEC right now is feeling good. What are some storylines right now that you're seeing? Ty Simpson, fourth-year guy, that's a story right there that never left. Coach's son, by the way.
Yeah, it is. I'll say this, and this is to Gary's point, whether it's the folks in Tuscaloosa or Athens or Baton Rouge, all feeling optimistic. I've said for several years now, the greatest time of the year, every team is undefeated and every student athlete has a 4.0. So, if you can maintain that, but I'll add one to it now here that's probably that is more pertinent now than ever. And every kid has an increased NIL deal from what they were receiving last year, whether they're at the same institution or not. So everything's great right now. Look forward to it kicking off 2 weeks from now. But yeah, the storylines in the SEC, and we talked about a couple of those schools that people are under the radar screen. I've got one more, and I see Mr. Sip giving some comments over there. I'm going to throw a little love to Stark Vegas there. I was just reading this morning about a new hire at Mississippi State. They had a couple on the administration side. New deputy AD for talent management services. Now, you want to talk about stepping into the professional ranks. They hired a guy named Greg Phillips, who I've known in the business for a long time. Most recently, the CEO at North Star Leadership Strategies, but he was a high-level administrator at Oklahoma for a while. He was at Florida State as the number 2 guy. Then he went to IMG Academy in Florida as the CEO there. So we are, again, embarking on a new world in college athletics. We've talked for a couple of years about people hiring GMs, but that title of Deputy AD for Talent Management Services is a new one on me.
Yeah. Gary, Courtney Morgan's the GM at Alabama, played at Michigan, was a freshman when Tom Brady was up there. Met him last year at the Touchdown Club. Impressive. Let's talk some football depth charts. Running backs, Alabama, man, they've had a lot of great ones. Give me the top 3 that you're seeing and hearing about in practice right now, and what stands out.
Yeah, I think running back as a group has gone from a position that maybe there was some concern to one they feel great about right now. Jam Miller's the returning starter there. Yeah, he's one of those guys that has consistently gotten better and has been good and solid, but they feel like he's now ready to take the step to be, one of these great Alabama backs. I mean, he's gotten bigger physically. I mean, there's a picture going around the internet of the last year, last year's picture next to this year's picture, and he's just huge for a guy that's not what you think of as a power back. Richard Young is another player that has kind of grown into the role, and then Daniel Hill from Meridian is about 240 pounds.
Yeah.
And then they've got Dre Washington, a transfer, and A.K. Deere, a freshman, and Kevin Riley, a true freshman from Tuscaloosa County High. So they got 6 backs. They've got that running back room where they really feel like they're stacked there and have incredible depth and are ready to go. Again, that's even the positions where you thought maybe there was concern. Alabama, it looks like has filled those positions with top flight talent and depth. So they feel really, really good about the running back group led by Jam Miller.
Yeah. Matt, I heard it said that there's 4 starting offensive linemen on that Alabama team that bench over 500, and most of them are squatting between 900 and 1,000. Where would you fall in that category?
I would love to watch those guys when they lift, because I would watch their spotters and I would cheer them on. And I'll tell you, one of those guys is an Iowan, Caden Proctor,
Yeah.
who committed to the Hawkeyes twice and went back to Bama the second time. But I just think that's a really big strength of your football team, Gary. I also think, I was writing this down in hopes that I would see you today. I think an interesting game, and I'm making a prediction on August 14th. I think October 25th, when Bama goes to South Carolina, I have a feeling that game's going to mean a lot for both football teams. I know we got a long way to go before we get there. I'm just drinking some South Carolina Kool-Aid the more I get in closer to prediction time. I really like Lenore Sellers, guys. I just think he fits the mold for what they're trying to do there. I also like some of their pieces back in defense. But getting back to Bama, it's kind of a cool story with Ty Simpson. You look at his background with his father being a coach and the road he's traveled. And I just think this maybe take us back, Gary, a little bit to the Greg McElroy days, how we're going to do a little play pass. We're going to run the football. We got a great running back room. We got a great line of scrimmage. I think Bama, man, I think they're 10-2, 11-1 football team, which means they may be in the top 4 if they win the SEC. I think Bama is with Grubb being in that situation. I just think they got all the pieces. Year 2 for DeBoer. That being said, a lot of people hope I'm right too, because if it doesn't go that and we're 9-3 again, Gary, we have a different conversation maybe. So.
Yeah, I think that you go 9-3 and you miss that playoff, you're gonna have a conversation. But you got a good team or not, and that's what's scary for all these light SEC teams. Is good can at times not be good enough. I mean, that's the point. You can have a really good football team and not be in Atlanta and not be in that playoff, and then your fan base, particularly at Alabama, if they miss. Here's the challenge for Kalen DeBoer and company. Everything looks so positive on paper, but you missed the playoff last year with, I still say, a playoff caliber roster.
Yes.
Regardless of what anybody else says, I think it was a playoff caliber roster. You didn't make it. If you come back this year and don't make it, that's 24 spots over 2 years, and you didn't get one of those spots, 12 last year and 12 this year. All that positivity, that's what's scary. Is everything's so positive right now. But you drop a game or two you're not supposed to and miss that playoff, and then that's gone. And then next year you'll have major pressure for this coaching staff to try to answer back, and you will have lost the confidence of the fan base. I'm just telling you, I know how it operates around here.
Yeah.
They don't make the playoff this year, and all this kumbaya, feel great, depth everywhere, in alignment, coaches, love each other, and that's out the window. So the results matter. I mean, I know Nick Saban talked about the process, and he was right, but everybody bought into the process around here because he got the results they were looking for. Process without results will get you a new head football coach, and he doesn't.
Right. Yeah, and you think about too, when I had a friend of mine who's pretty good knowledge of Alabama, gets to go to an occasional practice, and said when Nick Saban was coaching and Lane Kiffin was there, the 3 years Kiffin was there, a lot of those coaches in the staff meetings would sit on their hands when Coach Saban would ask, does anyone have anything to say? The one guy that would stand up and say, yeah, that dress makes you look really fat, was Lane Kiffin. And a lot of people try to criticize him, but Lane Kiffin, I got the dogs all riled up now, but Lane Kiffin, he's good about that. And I think about, man, if you've got a staff full of guys that are just, an echo chamber, that's not helpful. But what Nick Saban did for 17 years, 16 double-digit win seasons in a row, that's never happened in college football. And John Hartwell has gone into the witness protection program, but Gary, we both know the Alabama, we know the Auburn fans, we know fans in the South. You get let's talk about Mr. Deere from Mississippi comes up there. You're talking some really, there's a lot of talent, and Matt, the state of Mississippi has been wide open for a long time for Alabama. Right there, you go to Meridian. What is Meridian? An hour and 15, 20 minutes?
Yeah, maybe an hour and 20 minutes. Yeah, it's and I worked in TV in Meridian years ago. I always felt like Meridian was a unique market. It was a small market, but it was unto itself. You did not get any Jackson stations. You did not get any Birmingham stations. Meridian had 3 stations. They had 3 network affiliates. Now, this was before, TV's got as scattered as it is now. You had an ABC, a CBS, and an NBC. So it was a local market. But I always felt like it was split between Ole Miss fans, Mississippi State fans, Southern Miss fans, and Alabama fans. And 2 of the counties in that market were in Alabama, Sumter and Choctaw, and 5 in Mississippi. Yeah. So covering teams there, it was a small market, but you were trying to get spread evenly as you could between. And Oxford was a haul compared to Starkville, Tuscaloosa, and Hattiesburg. It was Alabama fans were just as loud and boisterous there in that town as the Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Southern Miss fans were. So that West Mississippi area or I should say East Mississippi area. That East Mississippi area is kind of almost like an Alabama recruiting base. If
I'm not mistaken, Matt Dean, Meridian, Mississippi has produced perhaps she's one of the most beautiful women in the world, Celia Ward. She was a cheerleader at Alabama from Meridian. I think she dated Bob Baumhauer.
She did. And Miss America, Susan Aiken, too.
That's right. You remember what Bob Baumhauer said? He goes, playing for Coach Bryant in the mid-'70s, winning national championships. I'm dating Celia Ward. He goes, life can't get much better than that. Then he opens up a wing shop. Baumhauer's Wings and Things. It just keeps getting better, Matt Dean. Something about Meridian. And my favorite restaurant, because it was a pilgrimage on the way back and forth to Destin every time, was Weidman's. And the old the barrels that you would sit on, the long counter. We stopped there on the way home, escaping Hurricane Camille, and had lunch. And remember that. But, Matt, what Gary just said, that's pretty cool. These small little towns, I didn't know how isolated Meridian really was, but they produced a lot of football players.
Gary, it's interesting. I grew up in the state of Iowa, obviously, and, we don't have a pro sports team in Iowa. So our pro sports team was the Iowa Hawkeyes when I was a kid. And we have a lot of those smaller communities that just, local radio and local TV was everything. And that's how we grew up, basically, was watching, our favorite team through the reporters and also the TV people. And I had the privilege of working for WHO Radio when I was a beat news journalism major when I was in Des Moines as a undergrad at Drake. And Larry Kotlar and Mike Newell were guys. I was cutting tape for them for the halftime and the postgame show of Iowa football on Saturdays. And that was my first introduction to college football when I was a journalism student. And, that's why even though my son works for a very good program, I'm always a Hawkeye fan. And the news out of Iowa City is we finally got a quarterback, guys. Yeah. So we'll see what that looks like next 2 weeks from now.
Yeah. Rob, I'm going to have to check out. Yeah.
54. Yeah, you're right. You're doing the show. Okay. Gary, let them know how they can follow you because you're a constant Twitter feed, but thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at GaryHarris_WVUA. Find my WVUA23 Facebook page as well. Put out a lot of content on both of those. TV station websites, WVUA23.com. You can download the app, and the same thing for Tide109.com, and you can download the app there. I'm on the radio 9 to 11 every day, about to be on here for 2 hours, and then local sports at 5, 6, and 10. And then a week from Friday night, August 22nd, I start Football Friday, which is a 1-hour high school football show from 10:30 to 11:30 on Friday nights, and I can plug that more next week.
I'm ready for the 8 Mile War, okay?
Yeah. All right, thanks,
Take
guys.
care, man. All right, appreciate it. Matt, we've lost John. Not sure what happened to him. He probably had a call, but what I love, what you just said, listening AM 1040 WHO, Des Moines, Iowa, Ed Podolak and the Iowa Hawkeye football broadcast. Clear Channel Radio has brought more people from different parts of the country to pull for different schools you'd never think of. There was a guy called in one time on WWL 870 AM in New Orleans from Nova Scotia, and he had relatives, Acadian French, who lived down in Louisiana, south of I-10. I think they lived in Port Morgan or something like that. Maybe lived out there in Lafourche, Bayou Lafourche. That's where Coach Ed Orgeron is from, the scholar. But All right, let's get back to this. I like some of these comments. A lot of people will tell you Frank Duffy and, Doug Dean will be on the round table with us tomorrow. Who's, the hot seat, the fireman, Gordon Ford, loves to always have that list of guys that are on walking the green mile. Is Brian Kelly under more pressure this year than Hugh Freeze? Considering every time you go to Twitter, you'll see a comparison of, Marcus Freeman's first 3 years at Notre Dame and Brian Kelly's first 3 years at LSU.
I would have to say, and this is just, I would say Brian Kelly. I mean, I think, I know there's been some talk, and I did think, Rob, at media days, I love the way Coach Freeze went out there with a lot of confidence, like, hey, this is our time a little bit, and we'll see how it plays out. But some of that may be because they have a favorable schedule. I think if they get by week 1 with Baylor, I think they're going to have a great year. I mean, I'm not saying that they can't have a great year otherwise, but I just think with the talent that Brian Kelly has inherited there, the program, the history, the national championships, the expectations are way higher there right now. Now Auburn's, going to have high expectations, but right now, I think if you go 8-4, 9-3 at Auburn, and we're moving, the stock's trending upward.
Yeah.
I think people are like, okay, we're good. I think LSU, man, they start off with a really tough week 1 matchup with Clemson.
Yeah.
But I've heard people say that they predict LSU not only to win the SEC but to win the national championship because we know the talent's there. I still go back to the defense, Rob. I love the quarterback, and I know they got us scared the other day. He was banged up a little bit. Sounds like he's fine because Nussmeier coming back made them an instant, in a lot of people's minds, SEC contender again.
Yeah, and there's, again, a lot of storylines. By the way, love this conversation, Mr. Sipline Squirrel Sports, the Cowbells at Mississippi State. Now, some people don't like them. I do like them because it is a unique tradition. I'm with exactly what they're saying, and people pass those cowbells on, family tradition for years. People don't think about that, but they ring true, and it's what we love about college football. All right, thinking about these quarterback battles, Austin Simmons looks like he's the guy at Ole Miss. Blake Shapen at Mississippi State got hurt last year in the Florida game. He's back. John Mateer at Oklahoma. I mean, we're getting golly, man. Some Venmo transactions and the FBI's. I don't know who's involved, but I think John Mateer is in the clear, and he and his offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, are ready to go. But you cannot pass your way to the SEC championship. You got to be able to run it. Well, they got Jay Knott. The top 5 running backs at Cal left? Guess who was named as the offensive coordinator at Cal? And then that happened. Brian Harsin. I mean, did you not see what he did to Auburn? I mean,
but is he a better OC than the head coach? Because he had success at Boise and they were really good. He just couldn't recruit the South, Rob. I mean, I know where you're at, and the roster he left was depleted, and I get that because recruiting matters. It's the number one thing. But if he's just coaching offense, does he have a chance to be successful?
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think he is a good offensive coach. I just don't think he understood the South. He didn't get it, and all you got to do is turn on the local news in the morning. There's a commercial for Jack's, the South. Big old biscuits with ham and cheese and eggs and bacon dripping in grease. That's how people eat down here. It's okay, but just exercise. You know what? Looking around this league, though, right now, you talk about South Carolina, Lenora Sellers, Ellis Johnson's concerned. How are they going to handle all these high expectations? Yeah. I mean, they got Dylan Stewart back, but they lost, 8 or 9 of their top 8 tacklers maybe on defense. Huge void there. And I was hoping John Hartwell, dogs went nuts, someone at the door. I just got a text from him. There we go. But looking at Georgia, South Carolina, Kentucky, Tennessee, I want to go to Tennessee and ask you, Roman Harper, he doesn't like all the turnovers. Dave Bartu, College Football Matrix on the show Monday. He's not excited about Joey Aguilar at Tennessee. He goes, he's 2 years at App State. What did he really do? But I have so much faith in Josh Heupel as a quarterback coach, Tennessee's got to have him be able to throw the ball downfield because they didn't get much of a passing game, believe it or not, out of Nico.
See, I may be in the minority here, but I was not a huge Nico guy. I was not. And I actually think if, going back to Roman Harper's point, if Tennessee can protect the football, play good defense, Josh is going to make Joey Aguilar better. I just think Josh is really good with quarterback play. And then, there's a lot of us that felt last year, if that Ohio State-Tennessee game would have been in Knoxville, it may have been a different result. Obviously Ohio State got on a huge run last year, but I think people are kind of sleeping on Tennessee because I think what's happened in these preseason rankings, Rob, it's pretty clear. Going back to Clemson, if you got a really good quarterback returning, no different than Drew Aller at Penn State, people think you're really, really good. And I see the concept. Yeah. But, sometimes there are offensive coordinators that make these young men better. Yep. And I do think Coach Heupel is one of those situations. I think, Will Stein has done a fantastic job at Oregon with back-to-back years with Bo Nix in year 2 and also with Dylan Gabriel. And now they have Dante Moore. So I think the Oklahoma situation is really intriguing to me because, I think this whole stuff that came out in Venmo, Rob, that had to be discussed before they accepted him as a transfer, right? They knew this was coming at some point. I'm guessing. I could be wrong. But Venables is a great defensive mind. If they get good quarterback play, Rob, I think they're a team that could cause some problems this year too.
Yeah, they're just storylines keep popping up everywhere. Again, Missouri, pay attention to this program. I am a huge fan of Eli Drinkwitz because he tells you what he thinks. And I love going up to Missouri, trout fishing, canoeing. I love St. Louis.
He's good people.
Keep your eyes. I worked for A.G. Edwards for 8 years. I spent a lot of time in St. Louis, Market Street and Jefferson, going down to Laclede's Landing, Cardinals Nation, Braves Nation, Tampa Rays Nation. But look, we've run out of time, Matt. Hang in here. Let me say something real quick about Landers Ford people, Poplar and Houston Levy. Ask for Brad Bellamy, the general manager. Don't make it complicated. Keep it simple, to the point. They'll do their very best to get you in a new car, truck, or SUV. And remember, they're right down the street from Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the square in Collierville. Easy to get to from Memphis or anywhere, and hewlettandunn.com. Ask Brendan about when they ship stuff. The quality, it's like getting something that you've wanted all your life. It's just great. Charles Hall, Raven Carpenter, J.M. Huffman, Squidward, Lydia, the whole crew out there. Filson, Barber, Duckhead, Stetson. They've got boots out there. Anderson Bean, made out of any and everything that you want. They can get boots made for you, and they can also get them restored to good as new. And Rumble Boxing Gym at Union and McLean. How we fight is how we live. And remember those Lights Out gummies. Dave Bartu on the show, College Football Matrix. They are great. They work. They'll help you sleep. 25% off coupon, promo code Sidelines. And, I will say this, the Broncos, they're unbelievable. They've got them at LandersFordMemphis.com. They're open every day of the week, 7 a.m., 7 p.m., except Sundays. Look, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Do yourself a favor today. Do something kind for someone. Don't give to get, give to give. See you tomorrow. Thanks for watching, everybody. Good night, John Boy.